Here for a good time, not a long time. Like, share, and subscribe. Help me run these numbers up. I got one thing to say, kind of important. Not really, but it's been sticking in my craw ever since I heard it. ASAP Rocky recently jumped on a interview with DJ Akademiks. Didn't see that coming, but what are you gonna do? You have between the conflict that Rocky has with old boy in Canada and the obvious support that academic shows to the Canadian bacon. Not the place you think Rocky would go. Not the kind of place you think he'd run up to promo and premiere his not premiere but like pump up his new album. But he did, and it made it I got it. Made sense. I get it. When I saw it, I didn't see it coming, but it made sense. You figured he'd give that light to somebody else, Rocky. You figured he'd give that kind of love to somebody else, but it is what it is. And he made a run. He ran a circuit. I get it, and I wasn't ready for him, so I digress. I digress. There's one thing that stuck with me after watching that interview. Just one small thing, bear with me. But it was when Rocky said, you're at the forefront of digital media, and you basically calling his integrity into question and letting them know that we know he gave you $5 grand, and telling them how we can all tell that your opinion is biased, you're compromised. And, Act denied it. And maybe it's just, if I took Act completely at his word, which for the sake of this argument, I'm going to do. And let's just say that Academics is 100% not compromised and he's just completely giving you his opinion. Okay. It's hard to take, but okay. Here's why I think Rocky was wrong. Couple things. One, Rocky called Academics a journalist. And I think this is one of those occasions where we just start throwing words around without realizing what they mean. Academics is not a journalist. He's not a journalist, not even close. He's not. He's a talking head. I'll give you Tastemaker, for what that's worth. I'll give you Tastemaker, but he's definitely a talking head, and he's a media person, but he is not a journalist. He, and as a result of Academics not being a journalist, not being anywhere near a journalist, Academics doesn't come with journalistic integrity. So when he appears compromised for what he is, that's par for the course. He also doesn't come with objectivity that you would expect from a journalist. Me as a journalist, I can tell you that even the music I don't care for in my personal time, even the music that I don't check for in my personal time, I can view and describe from an objective, professional point of view. That's what the training is about. It's not about what I like necessarily as much as it is about telling a story and giving people the facts. That has very little to do with my personal opinion on anything. Very rarely, when in the space of being a journalist, do I ever give anyone my personal opinion on anything. That's what being a journalist is about. That's why the integrity has to be through the roof. And that's why ASAP Rocky, referring to Academics as a journalist, deserved a hard stop right then and there. You are holding that man, DJ Academics. What's up, folks? People saying hi in the chat. What's up? What's going on, folks? You are holding DJ Academics to a journalistic standard that he never signed up for. You can't do that. That's not how that goes. That's like, you see a guy in the gym, and because you saw him there a couple days in a row, you think he's a trainer. You start holding him to a trainer's regimen. You start holding him to a trainer standard. He's not a trainer. He's just in the gym. Akademiks is not a journalist. He's in the media, but he is not a journalist. And Rocky was, quick to say, well, we hold you to these things. You're at the forefront of all this other stuff. You're at the forefront of media. They don't read media anymore. You're at the forefront of all this. There's no more magazines. Yeah, bro. And you get what you ask for. This is what that looks like now. It doesn't look like the journalists from the magazine space that came with integrity, that came with objectivity, that were able to give you a fair and balanced report on what was happening, and could inflect opinion, but only in the most sarcastic way possible, because as a journalist, your job is to be objective at all times. Very rarely, so rare that I can't think of a time, very rarely was I ever writing a piece or interviewing a subject where I included what my personal bias or personal thought was. If I asked a question, it was to give the other side of the coin. It was to give another side, another opinion, a different POV. You wouldn't necessarily know what my opinion and my POV was, but I would always ask questions to try to cover as much of the landscape as possible. So every POV would be accounted for off the strength of this subject. Everybody would know what this guy thought from all the different angles that the idea could come from. You know, age bracket, lifestyle, all these things were accounted for in the questions. That's journalism. Akademiks is not a journalist. So when Rocky said, you got to stop, you're basically telling him he was compromised, and, we know you took the money and you're not being objective. Yeah, bro. You're looking for journalistic integrity from somebody who's not a journalist. You're looking for a trainer's regiment from a guy who just is in the gym. But he's not a trainer. Ak's not a journalist. Ak is a talking head. Ak is to news journalism what Fox News is to news journalism. And if you look up that lawsuit, you'll see exactly why that makes all the sense in the world. So I'm not saying that, Ak is wrong or Ak is right. I'm telling you that Rocky's wrong. You can't hold that man to that standard. That's not what he signed up for. He's a talking head. Talking heads can be compromised. Talking heads don't need to be objective when they start stating shit, when they start speaking shit, when they start talking that shit. They don't need to be objective. For what? For what? That's not how it goes. They're very much going to lean towards in favor of their favorite. They don't have to be objective about shit. He look you right in the face and tell you that Drake won the battle. The rules aren't the same for talking heads as they are for journalists. He's under no obligation to be objective in this thing. Are you kidding? That's for journalists. And Rocky sounded so disappointed because he's like, you're the new media. Okay. The new media doesn't come with the old rules. Unfortunately. Unfortunately for people like Rocky, who actually was on the tail end of some of those systems. Rocky has been in magazines before. He knows what that looks like. He's been interviewed by actual journalists. So he's holding that standard. And you are holding the wrong guy to the right standard. You walked in the room with the right standard and you placed it on the wrong guy. He's not that, bro. He's not that. So if you thought that Akademiks or any of those guys from that section of life, if you are looking to them to be journalists, they're not. They're media, but they're not journalists. And you can't hold them to those rules. You can't hold them to those standards. That's not what they're there for. You want journalists? There are a few of us still out there. Rob Markman is a journalist, and you can tell in almost everything he does, the way he gives it up. That's a journalist. There's me, and there's a bunch more. I don't want to run down the line, but there's a gang of us still out here, still functioning, still getting it popping. We're objective, but media is not synonymous with journalism. The same way that a rapper is not the same thing as an MC. The same way that someone who can sing is not the same as a vocalist. The same way that you know, someone who can do a two-step is not the same as a dancer. There are differences. In the words of the bro Meek Mill, there are levels. And as we move further into this digital space, those levels are becoming super evident and super obvious. And I just hear more and more artists complaining that the new media is, acting a fool, out of pocket, like, the aura farming, and they're all about their brand, and it's not necessarily about the work as much as it is them being famous. And you get what you pay for. This is it. This is what it looks like now. This is the new shit. These are the guys you want to go sit down with. This is the new thing. You go to a rapper and you want to get MC quality. That's not how that works. You go to somebody who can do a two-step and you expect them to choreograph a piece for a show. Nah, that's out of his depth. That's not what he signed up for. And I just think in 2026, words mean things. And we got to start getting back to the fact that words mean things. Hence, journalism. Journalistic standards, journalistic integrity, that's a real thing. And what you are now witnessing is what happens when media lacks those things. When media doesn't have integrity, when media doesn't have standards, when media doesn't have objectivity. You get what it looks like now. I mean, it's sit here and tell you it's not the worst thing in the world. It definitely ain't a great thing. It definitely ain't a great thing. I just don't want you complaining about what you signed up for, Rocky, and all the other artists out there who sit down with cats. Don't complain about what you signed up for. This is it. This is what it looks like. You didn't go sit down with a journalist. You sat down with new media, and new media gets down like this. It's not even compromised. They're just doing them. If they take some money to tell you what's dope and what's not, welcome to new media. If they're heavily biased and their opinion is all over the place, and they're actually weighing in on from a personal point of view, welcome to new media. They can't be objective, welcome to new media. They don't have standards, welcome to new media. There's no integrity, welcome to new media. They take bread to switch their opinion up, welcome to new media. They want to be groupies for their favorites as opposed to staying objective. Bro, as cool as I am with the artist who, after interview after interview after interview, I've gained a rapport with, and can even say one of the main reasons that I didn't allow my friendship to grow to certain levels with artists is because the day may come when I have to tell them, yo, this is bad. Or I may have to give them some news that they don't really want to hear. Not a good look. Not a good. Who wants that level of uncomfortability with somebody who they actually like as a person? But when it comes to being a professional, gotta be a professional. Sucks, but that's the job. That's what it comes with. Can't be friends. Can't be kicking it in the pool. Can't be kicking it at that house. You do that stuff. They feel like you stabbed them in the back when the time comes and you have to say something negative about them. Yo, you was in my house. You was drinking my liquor. I hooked you up with girls. I did this. I did that. I gave you this. I gave you that. and this is what you gonna do. That's why I didn't take those things. That's why I didn't go to those places. That's why I didn't hit up those clubs. That's why I didn't hop in the car. That's why I didn't accept the plane ticket. That's why I didn't accept the clothes. That's why I didn't accept the gifts. I understand that you just want to get in good with somebody whose reviews and words can sway your career. I understand that. I get it. But from my point of view, it's not the wave. It's not a good look. Couldn't do it. And I see a lot of new media that they don't have those scruples. That's not a problem for them. You see them kicking it. And you can't even call it compromise because compromise implies that there was a standard to begin with. And new media doesn't necessarily have that. They have opinions and they have a point of view, and that's it. And anything outside of that is whatever. They consider that old. But that's all I wanted to say. ASAP, I hear you, bro, but you pinning that medal on the wrong dude. You pinning those standards on the wrong cat. That's not it. He's not the guy that you can do that with. There's some of us, but he's not one of them, and it's unfair to hold him to a journalistic standard. It's not fair. It's not fair to act. That's not what he is. He's I'm not sure he's ever said he was that. And if he did, it's very possible he doesn't really know what that means either. Very possible. Very possible. He has no idea what he's saying that he is when he says that shit. If he ever called himself a journalist, very possible he has no idea what being a journalist is. So, I don't want nothing. I ain't causing no beef. I'm not saying, I'm just saying, you know. If you want a car, you don't go shopping for it at a Timberland outlet. That's it. You want a goose down, maybe you don't go looking for it at Whole Foods. You're just shopping in the wrong place. And you're going to get what you pay for. And it probably won't be what you after. So, just be careful. Let's we label things so people know what they are. You label it a journalist, you expect the integrity, you expect the objectivity. You expect the principles, you expect the morals. You got media, talking head, you get what you get. That's all. That's why the labels matter. So you know what it is you're getting. If I ask for a hoodie and I get a pair of socks, well, we call it anything. No, I ordered the hoodie. You sent me socks. These are two different things. That's exactly how I'm looking at this entire thing. You needed an MC and you went and got a rapper. You needed a dancer and, you went and got a two-stepper. You needed a plumber and you went and found a dentist. Bad business. Bad bit. You needed a carpenter and you went and got an HVAC guy. Like, words mean things. Titles are important. You get what you pay for. So ASAP, if you're not happy that, Akademiks is not behaving as a journalist, my only advice is go find an actual journalist. Seems to be what you're really asking for. That's it. That's all. Like, share, and subscribe. Run the numbers up. Hype it up if you want to. I'll be back sooner than later. But in the meantime, in between time, that's all I had to say about that. I'll catch y'all in a second. Peace.